Located just off of Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. Visit the Tri-City Center today and find out why it's called the Mall with a Heart.
Del Walmsley here. The first thing you're going to have to learn is that until you stop expecting our politicians or anyone else to change your life isn't going to change. The only person who can change your life is you, but you need to know how. Listen to my show, the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. Right here on KCAA, now broadcasting on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, the stations that leave no listener behind.
San Bernardino, Loma Linda, Rialto listens to KCAA Radio.
Now, here's a new concept, digital network advertising, where businesses display your ad inside their building. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, your company is going to thrive with digital network advertising. Choose your marketing sites or jump on the DNA system and advertise with all participants. Your business ad or logo is rotated multiple times an hour inside local businesses where people will discover your company. Digital network advertising. DNA, a novel way to be seen and remembered. Digital network advertising with networks in Redlands and Yucaipa. Call in the 909 area 222-9293 for introductory pricing. That's 909-222-9293 for digital network advertising. One last time, digital network advertising. 909-222-9293.
And now, it's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start the shows every week, and usually in the morning, I think of what am I going to talk about today? Well, we've had some pretty good interviews in the last month or so. Richard Chamberlain, Roger Stone. So I was thinking, what am I going to talk about today? Judges. That's what I'll talk about. And
you're a judge, aren't you?
Yes.
Excuse me, I got to get my mic up here.
Well, yes.
I apologize.
And we've been doing the show now about a year and a half. So we probably have about 70 of them, as they say in showbiz, in the can.
In the can.
In the can. So what happens is I end up repeating some things because, how much can you talk for 70 shows without repeating yourself? So I know that for those people who haven't been listening to the show, they don't really know much about background and what judges are and who they are and how they get to be judges and things of that nature. Even though we've talked about it tangentially over the last year and a half, I'm going to go back a little bit and start from scratch because people want to know who are the judges, how do they get there?
Who are these people?
Sometimes not so terrific. And I decided I was going to be totally honest with the public. Not that I'm ever dishonest with the public, but I was going to be totally honest and give it a real objective view as to what's on the bench. Now that covers anywhere from your local justice of the peace, if you're living in the countryside, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. The titles, well, some of them are called justices, but basically it's the same thing. And so how do you get to be a judge? Well, there's three ways. First way is you know somebody. And I remember very vividly, back maybe 30, 40 years, there were certain people who were power brokers in the town. And one of them was the brother of a very close friend of mine. He was very tight with the governor. And if you wanted to be a judge, he picked up the phone and you were a judge. The next day you were appointed. You went through the Janney Commission, which was basically a fact finder to make sure that you were legitimate and all of that, no disciplinary record and things like that. But it was a phone call. And it didn't matter really what you did or who you did it with or anything else. Somebody picked up the phone and next day you got appointed. In fact, there was a guy who I kind of liked, actually. He was kind of an interesting guy. His father was a major pornographer. And that's my duck again.
A Donald Duck there? Or Daffy?
Whatever.
Is it Donald or Daffy?
Well, it's a friend of mine calling. I left a message the other day. Anyway, bottom line was, this guy's father was a major pornographer. I mean, really, those days.
Hardcore.
Yeah, but he also knew this guy really well, this friend of mine who was connected. And boom, next thing you know, he was on the municipal court. Those days we had different courts. There was a municipal court, which was the lower court, and then you had the superior court, which was a higher court. These are the trial courts. And in general, municipal court, the judges there handled misdemeanors, not felonies. And they handled the civil cases up to a certain limit. And after that, you had to go to superior court. So Muni Court, which what we called it Muni Court, usually had a lower class of judges. In other words, if they were making the appointment and you weren't anybody of significance, you got appointed to the municipal court.
What is the municipal court like? You know, what do they look at?
Doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, it doesn't?
No.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
No, all these Muni Court judges
They're gone?
that were
It's
marginal
gone?
at best. Yeah, they merged into the superior court.
Oh, really? So why did they do that? Because didn't they like deal with little minor offenses and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, still the superior court now has jurisdiction over all of it. Small claims takes part of what used to go to the municipal court.
Oh, okay.
Misdemeanors are generally prosecuted in the equivalent of what used to be the municipal court.
Oh, okay.
And there was not a lot of difference in the money, by the way. I think it was about $5,000 difference between the superior court and Muni Court. But there was the prestige factor.
Right.
A superior court judge was looked up to far more than a Muni Court judge who was, just kind of like got a job.
It's like a totem pole, huh, judge?
Well, that was one way to do it. You just have to know somebody.
God.
All political, totally political.
Just like nothing changes, huh?
Well, that was totally political. But the fact of the matter is that the second way to be on the bench is to get elected. You don't need to be political for that.
Right.
All you have to do is have enough money to pay for a campaign.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were looking at the ballot to see who retired, so there was an open spot. Yeah. It was hard to beat the incumbents because when you go to the vote and the judges are on the ballot, you don't know one from another. People always used to call me, what do you think of this person? What do you think of that person? Most people don't know it. They vote on the name.
Yeah.
If it sounded like it had an Italian name and you were Italian, that's who you voted for.
Yeah, my dad ran for a judgeship.
Did he didn't win?
He didn't win it, no. He didn't win it.
But you can pay for some bucks and you can win. I told the story. A good, very, very close friend of mine was up for re-election about 2 years ago, I guess. Mm-hmm. It cost him $50,000 because somebody took him on to get his reappointment.
I was wondering how much my dad spent. Could have gave it to me. Could have gave it to me. Well, my brother.
He spent $50,000 to get reelected. He had like an 89% vote in his favor because he promoted it.
Right.
And
did he spend $50,000 out of his own pocket?
Yeah. Well, He raised the money from various people.
Right, but I'm still
friends and associates and
right.
Whatever. He was connected to a community here in the city, and they supported him, and that's what happens sometimes. If you're a particular ethnic group, all of a sudden that group gets behind you.
Right.
And they take on the people on the other side who were not in that group. Just one of those flukes.
Right.
Way it works. The third way, the second way, there's no political influence, so that's easy. You don't have to talk to grease the wheel or do anything like to get that job. The third way was the way I did it. I was having lunch with a very good friend of mine, the judge I was just mentioning, as a matter of fact. And it was 2008. That's when I got appointed. It was 2008. And he was telling me that because of the economic crisis, they couldn't afford to hire any new judges. And there were 4 judges short in his court, in his building, that district. There were 4 judges short. And they couldn't afford to bring anybody in. So their calendars were getting longer and longer, working harder and harder.
Same pay,
and getting very frustrated by it. So I said to him, well, I'm sorry to hear the story. What can I do for you? He says, you can become a judge pro tem. So what's that? I knew what it was. I knew it was a part-time, you work for the county.
You still wanted to hear about it.
Well,
you still want him to tell you.
Where did my appetite? So he said you could do something meaningful, and he loves being a judge. He really does. He's thought about retiring. He's not going to retire. And he says, you don't have to do it very often. A day a month or 2 days a month, and we'll train you, and we'll get you appointed, and all
get
of
the
that.
title, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. So I said, okay, it seems like it might be fun. And I felt that at that time, I still feel that way about doing something for the public. The law business was very good, and I thought it was time for me to give back.
And you didn't get paid to do this, right?
No, never got a penny.
That's really noble of you.
Well, I don't know how noble it was.
Well, it is. I mean, listen, most people, come on, this society.
Actually, it cost me money.
I'm sure to drive there and have lunch.
But I did get parking. Parking was always free.
That's very nice of the county to do that for you.
Parking was very sweet.
That's very sweet of the county to do that.
Yeah, and there are perks to it. You didn't have to stand online to get into the building, and show your ID. You just walk in with the robe over your shoulder, on your arm, and they let you
They
in.
didn't put your arms up or anything like that? Wow, look at you.
And
what a deal.
And you get a little wave from the security person. It was very nice.
Judge.
It was nice. So
wow.
After the break, I'll take it to the next step.
Okay. This is For the People of Judge Herb Dodell. Check out his book, From the Trench to the Bench, available on Amazon.com. We'll be back with more from the judge after this.
1050 AM, KCAA.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, he has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system, so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil, so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, so I told my friend Jimmy that I'd be willing to do it. I'd have to take all these classes, and be certified, because they don't just put you on the bench and say, go have a good time. You have to be trained. So I said, okay, I'll do the training and everything else. I thought it would be interesting anyway. I did all of that. Then what they do is they pass your name around to all the Superior Court judges. It was 500 judges or something. And they basically vet you to see if anybody's got something nasty to say about you. If they don't, you pass that part of it. So I took the tests. I passed all the tests, got vetted. I guess nobody said anything bad, because I got appointed by then presiding Judge Stephen Zuliger, who was for 3 years. But it gets renewed, as long as you're a good boy. It gets renewed, and you have to re-qualify every 3 years. You got to go back and take all the tests over again, and the whole deal.
And you don't get paid?
You don't get paid.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll take a shot at it. And I remember the first time they sent me out I was in Glendale. And the chambers was about the size of probably your bathroom at home.
I bet.
And there was some robes hanging on the wall. Looked like they were there since the Crusades. I said, so when I had decided to do it, my kids went out and bought me a robe.
Oh, that's nice of them.
and a plaque.
Oh, cool.
One of those.
Yeah, one of the judge. Yeah, well, you have to have your judge plaque.
Yeah, you got to have it sticking out in front of you.
Yeah, of course.
So I said, okay. I started out like once or twice. I liked it.
Once or twice a month?
Yeah, I liked it. It didn't last very long. Pretty soon I was once or twice a week.
Well, what were you presiding over?
Then in the beginning, mainly I think I was doing small claims.
Okay.
Mainly.
All right.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I started to like it, and they needed more help because they were economically stressed. And there was a department in the Superior Court that would give you assignments, and they would call you. Say, can you cover Pasadena? Can you cover Long Beach? So I'm covering 15 courts.
Oh, God.
And they're calling me on a regular basis.
I bet they are.
Pretty soon I'm 3 days a week.
Oh, man. Not getting paid.
Not getting paid. I'm getting paid in satisfaction.
I understand.
But I was beginning to really like it.
This is what you're talking about, the spiritualness of life.
You know what? I realized that I was doing something.
That's what I'm saying.
I was altering people's lives in a positive way.
There you go.
Because I always treated it, always, to this day, always treated it as doing justice. It's all about justice. To me, it's all about justice. And so I did more and more, and then Jimmy, my buddy at the court, we would have lunch once a week. And he was mentoring me as I bring cases and what was going on in the court. And I was learning, not from books or from the tests that I had taken or these courses, but he was training me, and I would give him hypotheticals, and he was right there. And so I guess it came down to about 3 days a week. But but I was going to places like Lancaster.
Oh, my God.
And Long Beach was 2 hours on the road in each direction, But I loved it so much because I felt so rewarded by it. The money didn't really mean anything. To me, at that time, I was saying to myself, you know what, I'm getting far more out of this than the buck.
And you were still doing law work,
Yeah,
right?
I was. Not as much, but I was.
Yeah.
I couldn't do as much as I was before because I was pretty busy.
Yeah.
And I kept
working
on
for free.
Working for free. No, I was working for a different kind of compensation. And so I got renewed and all of that, and got honored by the temporary judges, and it was very, very rewarding.
That's
got the
awesome.
plaques on the wall and all of that stuff. So the question is, who becomes judges? A lot of times, people who are not making a living become judges. They can't make it in their business.
As an attorney.
As an attorney. And I know a bunch of those. They started out maybe as a pro tem, and then they went on to become a commissioner, which is one step above and one step below the full-timers. And they worked their way up to getting a full-time appointment. Some of them remained commissioners forever.
Yeah.
Never got higher than that. And
my dad was actually a commissioner. That's what he did. They actually appointed him a commissioner a few times.
Yeah,
I remember that.
That one is a paid job.
Yeah.
And
well, my dad ain't working for free, Judge. I'm
but
sorry.
They were totally dependent on the presiding judge. You could be out of work in 20 minutes if you were a commissioner.
Yeah. Well, he just did it on the side.
The full-time judges that were working for compensation, they'd have to be thrown out by somebody for doing something illegal. Very rarely do they lose their spot as judges.
Yeah, they have to do something really bad. Like what would be a bad thing a judge would have to do to get thrown off the bench? Like name something that you know.
A felony for sure.
A felony. Okay.
I would think so. A lot of them, you read about them getting arrested for DUIs all the time.
How about going to a massage parlor?
Depends on which one. And it depends on what team you own.
Orchids of Asia?
Depends on what team you own.
Wow.
Look, I was saying to you before, if this had been a guy, just Joe Blow, someplace, but maybe Joe Blow is a bad word. But
I think it was
Joe Smith.
Okay, Joe Blow.
Nobody would pay. Nobody. And that was quick. That was off the top of the head. Oh, off the top of the head. Oh, yes. So the reality is nothing would have ever happened.
I got to hand it to you, Judge. You're pretty fast.
Give me some time. Anyway, maybe we can do stand-up comedy. The end result was that I enjoyed it so much. I got so much out of it. And I don't think I was ever reversed on appeal. I know several times I was appealed. But I read the opinions and pretty much affirmed each time. And I felt like I was doing something meaningful. I went home at the end of the day and I remembered the cases and what I had done and what people had been in front of me and how I could maybe help their lives a little bit better. You know, in a small claims court, even though it's $10,000, $10,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of
money.
people.
It's a lot of money to me.
You know, it certainly could alter your lifestyle
Absolutely.
for one period of time.
Absolutely.
And you have the same authority as the regular full timers.
Yeah.
With some limited exceptions. Like I couldn't issue search warrants. And I couldn't do adoptions. And I couldn't do name changes.
That's weird.
Those are the only three things that I could think of that I couldn't do.
I mean,
everything else I was the same as every other judge.
I can see search warrants and maybe adoptions, but name changes? Why?
I have no idea.
That's sort of bizarre. Oh, well.
But you know, there were rules.
I'm sure.
We had to follow the rules.
Yeah.
But the reality was that people that had got these jobs, some of them were pretty awful. I mean, really pretty awful.
Not about the judges.
Yeah, I'm going to tell some stories today because I think it's important for people to understand that since you don't know who your judge is going to be, generally speaking, when you get sued or you have to sue somebody or you get arrested. In fact, somebody asked me today, somebody called me today and said, I got a case in Riverside, a criminal case in Riverside. Who's good? Who's not good as a judge out there? Because you're always shopping for the best person, especially in criminal. You're looking for the light sentences.
Oh yeah.
You don't want the heavy-handed people who are going to just throw the book at you and follow the guidelines with no emotion and no feelings or anything like that. So you're always looking. In fact, all litigants have what's called a 170.6 challenge. That's California law. Meaning that you can kick out any one judge one time, not the same judge, but you one time, and you get the next one in the barrel, so to speak. And it used to work in L.A. County, and I know this from a judge friend of mine, that if you kick this one guy off, and everybody kicked this guy off, that this guy was, they papered this guy all the time.
Why?
He was horrible.
I mean, just mean? Or?
Yeah, he was mean and nasty and rigid, and nobody wanted him. He was a smart guy, but you didn't want to be in his courtroom. It's like there's a federal judge, I think he's still the senior status, still there. The man is the meanest guy you could imagine in the courtroom.
Right.
He would yell and scream and insult you and do all kinds of things. I was in front of him once. I was on the right side. The other guy had got him annoyed or something, and he read him the act, because they take it very seriously. Another friend of mine who became a judge, we had a case together years and years before, and he said some of these judges think they get anointed instead of appointed.
Right.
Because once you got that robe and you walk out there and they do hear you, whatever they say, you're the boss.
Gives you a power trip.
Absolutely, 100%. And no matter what your ego is, and no matter how hard you fight it, there's still an element of it. There's still a component of it in your head that you somebody special. Look, get a special elevator. You know why you have a special elevator? They don't want you to be riding it with the public.
Yeah.
I told this story one time. It was in Long Beach. I'll never forget it. And I had a case that I didn't know what way to go on it. Procedural. It was a procedural issue. And the presiding judge was right down the hall. And we didn't have a back walkway to get to from where I was. So I just declared a slight adjournment, and I walked down the hall with my robe on, right? So I get to the PJ's courtroom. I go in, and the bailiff, without being physical, said, "What are you doing? You can't walk in the hallway with a robe on." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "People don't like judges. You can't, it's a security issue. So, they do treat you very, very specially."
Oh, yeah.
And they take care of you. When I was doing night court, I was a judge in night court for a while, which I thought was kind of interesting.
How long does that go? What's the hours in night court? Just curious.
That was, I'm trying to remember what it was, like 6 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, something like that.
Oh, really? It wasn't like 6 to midnight or anything like that?
No. But the bailiff would walk me to my car.
I bet.
And he waited until I turned the engine on and drove out of the parking lot.
I'm sure.
I mean, they do watch out. And there's a certain celebra that goes along with it. People think that there's something very special about it.
Well, it's a control thing. I mean, you control people's lives. You can actually have people thrown in jail. You can have your bailiff throw people in jail for even just talking out of place.
I threatened several people. I threatened some disbarred lawyer one time because he wouldn't answer questions at an examination under oath, which was basically a debtor's examination where the creditor is entitled to ask you, the debtor, what you own, where it is, bank accounts and whatever. And he didn't want to answer some questions. So I said to him, I'll tell you what, you don't have to answer the questions. I got a little room in the back and you can think about it. And about 4 o'clock, I'll call you. This is in the morning.
Right.
And my bailiff, whose name was Tak, whenever he would hear the magic words, he'd walk over and he would shake the handcuffs behind this person.
Really?
Yeah, jingle the handcuffs. He had a little routine, a little dog and pony show.
Oh, God.
And the guy all of a sudden became more interested in answering the questions than spending the afternoon in a non-air conditioned, barred room, which was no bigger than your bathroom.
Wow.
Not a comfortable place to be. And no food, no snacks, no machines,
no nothing. No water.
Now we'll talk about who else is on the bench when we get off the break.
Okay. It's for the people of Judge Herb Dodell. If you want to ask the judge a question, you can email him, askjudgeherb@gmail.com. Back with more of the judge right after this.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
Okay, before we get back to who becomes judges, I'm going to tell a couple of personal stories to give you an illustration, since you don't know who your judge is going to be most of the time, and you have very little control of who ultimately is going to be your judge at the end of the day, whether it's civil or criminal. You need to know who these people are and how they're going to treat you. So here's two quick stories. I was never religious, real religious.
Yeah.
And I had a case in front of the judge that was the Manson judge.
Oh, really?
Charles Older.
Wow.
I had a case in front of Older, a trial. And there was a Jewish holiday. And even though I wasn't religious, I always felt respectful by not working on the holiday.
Yeah.
That was just my practice.
I hear you.
So I went and I said to him, look, I'm going to need to be off on Thursday or whatever it is. He says, why? I told him. But the reason was, he says, I don't believe in personal holidays. You're either here on Thursday or you're in jail on Thursday. You pick it.
Really?
Absolutely. Charles Older, remember? Very
wow.
good. I could have gone down to the presiding judge and nothing would have happened. It would have been.
Yeah.
I would have gotten a day off. But what do you think the rest of my trial in front of this guy would have been like?
Oh,
hell. It was nasty to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to think about what is going to happen to your client.
Is that the same judge that Charles Manson, went after?
Yeah, he had a gun under this. Instead of having a gavel, he had a gun on his chambers.
Really?
On the bench. Yeah.
Wow.
He was a strange guy. I had another case when I was in Santa Monica. This judge, we've talked about this judge before, and I had a kidney stone in the middle. and I was in agony. If you've had a kidney stone, it's really very, very painful.
I've heard.
And so I had gotten an appointment to go to see a urologist. So I said to him, I need to leave a little early because I've got this appointment, I've got this kidney stone, and I'm really in agony. He says to me, go on lunch hour. I'm not letting you out.
Jeez.
And he wouldn't let me out. He made me. I remember standing, holding on to that table, holding on tight because I was feeling such pain.
Let's just say you
walked out. They could put you in jail.
They were throwing you in jail, right? For contempt.
Contempt.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And that's what those are two real stories too.
Yeah.
And so you don't know who you got as a judge. You better be prepared for somebody like this because they're all over the place. These are not isolated instances. There are some judges that are plain old rude, just rude. They forget that they were once lawyers. Now all of a sudden they got all this power. I shouldn't say they. I never let it go to my head. I never did. I was always very respectful, even the people who were not very nice.
Well, it's part of being a judge, I think, is to be, honorable to everybody. That's why they say the honorable.
Well, whatever. I used to nod my head, and listen and be as patient as I can. I was once criticized by the administrator in one of the courts. She says, you give them too much time. You let them talk for too long. I said, no, I'm here to hear the whole case. And I'm not going to be rushed to make a decision because they've had 10 minutes to be in front of the court. Not going to do it. And so the administration is a little on the pedantic side as well. Back to who the lawyers are, the people who can't afford it, to be in private practice.
Right.
It's a guaranteed income. You got a pension. And you have to put up with all the nonsense that goes along, which brings me to another story, another true story. A friend who was a presiding judge in a smaller district here in Beverly Hills, actually, is where he was. And he had like a little kingdom. He was like the king there. Because I would go there, we were friends from before, and I'd go into chambers and we would schmooze and all of that. He is a really good guy, really good guy. And he was there about 18 years. But there was another judge in that building who was a certifiable idiot. She would fall asleep. She would fall asleep. I had a case in front of her. She wouldn't let me out because I wanted to paper her, I have to deal with her.
Right.
And she made me stay in the courtroom till 12 o'clock. I had to sit there. So she gets into a fight with this friend of mine who's the presiding judge in that district. She apparently knew the presiding judge that was overseeing that district politically,
Mm-hmm.
They were friends of one kind or another. And she was awful because I remember vividly, she would sign every warrant that came in front of her. It didn't matter how good or bad it was. She was like a rubber stamp for the DA's office. And if you were a criminal defense lawyer, you didn't want to be anywhere near her.
Right.
And
that's not
she
cool.
went to this friend of hers who was the presiding judge, got my guy transferred, he got my friend transferred to traffic court.
Oh.
Downtown.
Oh, God. The worst.
Downtown, the worst.
The worst.
So I go have lunch with him, probably was about a year into it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why don't you just quit? I mean, you hate getting up every morning to go listen to red light tickets, and you're bored, and it's not rewarding to you and everything else. Well, why don't you just quit? He says, I got another year and a half to go to get my pension.
Yeah.
So he sat it out.
Well, of course he
And
would.
on the day that he qualified for the pension, was the day that he closed the door for the last time.
Good for him.
And there are some people who take it just because it gives them power.
Yeah.
It's not about the money. A lot of times people who have made decent livings, they get to be like 40, 50 years old. They decide they want to do something different. Some of them become very good judges because they're in it for the right reason.
Right.
And there are several that I know of that now retired that are doing work as mediators that were formerly very successful business people.
Yeah.
One of the guys that ran Disney's legal department, general counsel, became a judge. He certainly didn't need the money. And he was very good for the number of years he was on the bench. Now he's mediator.
Now, judges make a lot of money, or
no? They made $185,000 in California.
In California,
I once did a study on it. That the lowest one I found was 95, like in Mississippi.
95,000 for a judge.
Yeah, 185, but you get a lot of perks because you got the pension, and
probably health.
Yeah, you get all the benefits. That's true, and you get great vacation. You get 6 weeks vacation.
Nice.
This friend of mine, every year, he goes back to Lebanon. He's Lebanese.
Mm-hmm.
He goes back to Lebanon every year for 6 weeks.
Wow.
That's his vacation.
That's his vacation.
That's
huh?
his vacation.
Go back home.
But he gets a chance to take a vacation and when he wants to, and for pretty much how long he wants to.
That's great.
And so
you get all the holidays off.
Every holiday.
Everything.
Every
President's Day.
Every
Martin Luther King Day.
Ex-President's Day. Every no matter what it is, they're closed.
They're closed. Veterans Day. Everything.
Well, that's one of the perks of the job.
Right.
And there is a respect factor. There's absolutely no question about it.
Oh yes.
I mean, I know some people who, in their personal lives, it's outrageous, horrible personal lives, miserably unhappy, divorced, going through all kinds of struggles and whatever. This is a refuge, they
this
get on
is their one
bench,
outlet,
and they can exercise their authority.
Right. Do you think people like that that are going through struggles personally take it out on people?
No.
Via being a judge?
No, because this one guy that I'm thinking about, who I spoke to the other day, as a matter of fact, going through a very difficult time in his life.
Yeah.
I had been his lawyer, so I knew a lot of what was going on in his life. And he was going through horrible days. But if you were in his courtroom, because I used to go in there every now and again, because I was 2 doors down, so if I was done with my calendar, I would go in and I would sit in his court. He was terrific with the people in the street. The average guy in the street, you couldn't ask for better. He was friendly. He was nice. He was literate. He had been a DA. It's another group of people who become judges, DAs and public defenders.
Yes.
They work their way up. They make a little bit more money, and it's the prestige of the job. But he always did research. You go into his chambers, all the stuff is piled up. He was a little sloppy about other things because I was covering for him one time and he wasn't there. And I was looking for something on the desk and I found an old sandwich that was down there. Could have been 2 months old.
Oh my God.
But he was very good. He's still on the bench. He's
that's
a very, very good guy.
Well, that's good.
And really good to the public.
Maybe that's his outlet for being
honest.
Yeah, maybe that's his outlet for being a good person.
He's got a great sense of humor.
That's what I'm saying.
He's gone through some really difficult times, but he's got a great sense of humor.
That's cool.
And I think he's in it for the right reason, too. And he actually does the research. Small claims court, most people think, it's small claims court, it's $10,000. It doesn't mean anything. But you're deciding cases based on intellectual decisions that you have to make. This comes out of the knowledge and the books and everything that you study to do what you're supposed to be doing. And you have to know almost every subject, because small claims covers everything.
Yeah. It's a lot. Listen, I mean, $10,000's a lot of money nowadays. I mean, most people, there's research done that most people don't even have $500 in their bank account. I mean, the majority of Americans, it's crazy. So you're talking about a lot of money for a lot of people, at times. It may not seem like a lot in like a big case or whatever, but
that's small claims.
No, I'm saying small claims. It's $10,000 is a lot of dough to a lot of people.
Well, then we're talking about historically what I was doing. The first part I was doing small claims. Then I got assigned to restraining orders. I sat in restraining orders for, I think, 5 or 6 years. I heard thousands. And there's no money involved there.
Right.
Well, there's money involved for the lawyers because you can get attorney's fees if you prevail in a restraining order case.
Yeah.
And I would have to decide how much to pay the lawyers. So I would see how the lawyers were cheating their clients. And believe me, they charged for going to the water cooler.
Oh, of course.
And so I had to do that too. But in those cases, you are definitely altering someone's life. You change their life.
Absolutely.
When you issue a restraining order, forget about the guns for the moment that you take away. But if they violate the restraining order, they're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And it's a crime.
Right.
It's
not only that,
orders,
but other people take those restraining orders, they get one against them, and they take it out against the person. And then they get really violent at times against the person. So
I didn't see too much of that.
No, I'm not saying that, but Judge, you hear about cases where a woman is taking out a restraining order against a boyfriend or a husband or whatever, and then the next minute, she's dead because he went out and killed her. I mean, you hear about these cases. That's what I'm saying. It's very it can be life altering. Not that you ran into this, but I've heard about this.
I didn't. I think I probably saw less than a dozen people for a second time.
Oh, that's good.
One came in, I will never forget. She had gotten a restraining order against a coworker. They were both medical doctors. And she had gotten a restraining order against because he was harassing her at the clinic. And he was emailing her and faxing her and texting her and whatever it was. And there had been a restraining order, a temporary restraining order issued against him, not by me. And now we're hearing the regular case. And in between the time of the temporary restraining order and the hearing, he was still doing it. So I said to him, we could put you in jail for this right now. When are you going to get the message that she doesn't love you, and you can't keep doing this? Whatever. I issued the order. I guess it was about 2-3 months later, they came back. They reconciled that he wasn't going to bother anymore. He had a new girlfriend.
Oh, there you go.
She was there, and they resolved it, and I dissolved the order because you can do that.
That's cool. That's cool. That's interesting.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I want to talk to you about bail.
Bail.
You know what that is, right?
Yeah, I do, actually. All right, we'll be back after this.
You know what? It's not going to exist in California anymore. It may not exist. I'm going to talk about it.
A lawyer that was for the people. Someone who had the best interests of the people at heart. Herb Dodell has been a lawyer for more than 50 years and has been a Superior Court judge for 9 years, having presided over more than 9,000 cases. In this show, he will reveal the secrets of how things really work in the legal system, so you can maximize your position and benefit most when you're in trouble and need someone on your side to simplify the process for you. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
As an example of how much power judges have, issuing a restraining order against someone is not only with the guns and the conduct. It's if you are leaving the country, you may not be able to get back in. In fact, Canada, from what I was told by an immigration lawyer, I didn't know this before, you can't get into Canada if you have a restraining order against you.
Really?
This was a businessman who had all of his business in Toronto, and he couldn't get into Canada.
Wow.
So if you're applying for the military, all of this is life altering.
Yeah, I know.
And so when you're on the bench, you have that awesome responsibility of doing it the right way. And the same thing, I was assigned from time to time, mainly in Long Beach. I had a calendar in Long Beach on unlawful detainers, evictions. And that's sometimes very sad.
Yeah, you're throwing people out of their place.
Yeah, and I told the story many times. I probably told it on the show before. I was in Beverly Hills doing unlawful detainers, and it was Christmas, the day before Christmas. They were about to throw her out. There was a rare possession, which is what the sheriff uses to take you out of the property. They lock it up and then lock you out. And they were supposed to lock this lady out. I think it was on Christmas Day, or the day before Christmas. I can't remember exactly.
On Christmas Eve.
Right. So I said, she came in what they call ex parte, meaning it's not a scheduled anything. They just come in and they ask to be heard. And we do that. If it's something that's urgent or time is a really important factor. And I listened to her. She was going to be living in a car with her 2 kids. Over Christmas, I said, I ain't doing this. And so I gave her an extension. because we can withdraw the stay.
Right.
Or we can stay it, actually. We can withdraw the order and stay the execution of that order. And I did that. And I'll never forget it. Truly will never forget it. I get off the bench and I'm walking by, and the clerk says to me, my regular judge wouldn't do that. I was sitting for somebody else. He says, my regular judge wouldn't do that. You're a softie. Those were the words that she used. I said, softie? I said, you think it was a good idea to put this lady in the street in a car with her 2 kids? Who's going to get hurt by giving her an extra couple of weeks? Nobody.
Exactly.
And so I took it very, very seriously. When I was doing unlawful detainers, most of them ended up in stipulations, meaning that both parties agreed. The tenant would leave after a certain period of time, and then they wouldn't go as far as getting a judgment. And I had little techniques that I used. One was called lodging the judgment. Instead of entering the judgment, lodging means it's there. If things don't work the way they're supposed to, pursuant to the deal, the lodging then becomes the judgment.
Right.
But if they comply and everything, there's no judgment on their record, meaning that the next landlord is not going to know about it.
Which is cool, because it's going to be really hard for somebody to get a place if they have a judgment against them.
And I also used to seal the records, because most people didn't know that you could get the judge, if you make it the right approach, to seal the record, meaning that nobody knows about it except the 2 litigants, the landlord, the tenant, and the court. And that way it doesn't mess up your credit. And I would regularly seal the records. Even if the landlord objected, which they did sometimes, I seal the records. Oh. And I always tell them, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to unseal the record.
Right.
And so I did that for a period of time. Heard many of those.
That's got to be heartbreaking.
Yeah, but I saw, it's on both sides.
Yeah, but
I had some real nasty landlords too.
Of course.
There was one guy, I think I told this story too. The place was so horrible that the tenant brought in pictures of what it looked like, maggots all over the place. Yeah. Just awful.
Gross.
In fact, what he did is he captured a cockroach and he brought it in a glass jar for me to see it. I mean, this was in San Pedro. I was sitting in San Pedro then. And so the landlord was expecting to throw him out. I said, I said, not only that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to fine for the tenant because the property is uninhabitable, and I'm going to reduce the rent to 0. He stays there until you fix it.
Wow. And
he comes back about a month later. I continued it for a month.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back a month later with a report from some private company that it was all fixed. But the tenant was there saying, it's never been fixed. It's still the same horrible place, whatever. So I said to the landlord, I said, I'll tell you what, it stays the same way, no rent, until you bring in something from the city. I want to see a city inspector come in and tell me that it's clean. Otherwise, you don't pay any rent. If you fix everything up, you get your rent back, starting from the time you fix it up.
Right.
So there's a lot of discretion. Judges have a tremendous amount of discretion. In addition to deciding rules of evidence, what gets in and what doesn't get in, and you don't know what a judge is going to do. Some of them are not that very smart. Trust me when I tell you, there are some very dumb judges that are sitting on there. They knew somebody or whatever. I mean, dumb. Really, really dumb. They could have gone to correspondence school to get their license.
DUM, right? Dumb.
Yeah. But the bottom line really is, it's so much discretion.
Yeah.
Like a continuance. In restraining order court, there's no guarantee you'll get a continuance. You come in and you say, I want to put this over for 2 weeks. I want to get a lawyer. Well, you should have gotten a lawyer before. You didn't. Continuance is denied. You got a lawyer today? Go out in the hall, read the file, and come in and try the case. So it's and rarely, truly rarely, are those cases that are decided on discretionary calls overturned. There's a proclivity in the appellate court, and I hate to say this, but it's really true, to rubber stamp a lot of the stuff that was done below. You're too busy.
Right.
And writs a writ is seeking immediate relief as opposed to an appeal, which could take a long time. And I would say less than 5% of the writs are granted. Pretty much whatever the judge did below, is pretty much what they're going to do.
Are they even looked at?
I would assume so. I've never been in the appellate court, although I think I may have even mentioned this guy the last show. I had a friend who became a muni court judge originally. He was a big hockey fan. He went to the same Kings games that I went to, and we knew each other for a long. His father had been president of the state bar, a very legitimate guy, smart guy. And he was elevated when the municipal court was blended into the superior court. He became a superior court judge. He was very good. I used to go to, he was in Santa Monica. I would go and schmooze with him every now and again when I was over there. He went on the Court of Appeals. I bet he's been there about 30 years. He's a tribute to the system. Bright, legitimate, intellectual, nice man. I ran into him at the airport. Our kids were going to school back east, and his kids were going on the same flights that my son was going on. And just a very, very devoted, hardworking public citizen. There are some exceptionally fine judges that are out there. Really, really quality. Like my friend Jimmy, he'll stay up till midnight to make sure that he gets it right. He even called me and asked me for my opinion. What do you think? What do you think about that?
That's good.
And there are some very dedicated, hardworking people. Some of them are a little on the strange side. There's one guy that drives, you can see him walking his bike down the hall with his helmet on.
Oh, God.
And then there are others who are just fabulous. You know,
right.
If you happen to be sitting around on the benches, the hard benches that are outside the courtrooms, the judges are walking down the same hall, and they'll stop and talk, and it was just the neatest. There's one guy's a big fan of Abraham Lincoln. He's written stuff. He sends me stuff all the time about how great a trial lawyer Lincoln was. Most people don't know that Lincoln was a very, very fine trial lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
A top-of-the-line trial lawyer.
Right.
And so discretionary calls go there. Let's go to bail. Bail used to be, and is still, if you have the money, you get out. Even this guy, R. Kelly, they got $1 million bail on the guy.
Yeah.
And he ain't going anywhere. He apparently hasn't got the money.
Yeah,
or the collateral.
Well, yeah, they're trying to get him out, but he hasn't been able to get out as of
And
now.
on the other hand, you talk about discretion. In a case that I had, an insurance fraud case, where they set bail at $600,000 for a guy that wasn't going anywhere. Pillar of the community, a professional, medical person, no threat to the community, all that. The judge set bail at $600,000, which meant he had to come up with $60,000 plus collateral.
Yeah.
Totally unnecessary. And discretionary call. You take it up on a writ, what do you think is going to happen? Discretionary call. Ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at in the new bail rules. The new bail rules under SB 10, that's the numbers in California, a judge has the discretion to decide whether you're low, middle, or high risk. No money involved at all. So the poor people, if they're not a risk, are going to get out on OR, on recognizance, or on minimal conditions like a bracelet or something like that. So the poor people are going to get a break under this new law. The bail bondsmen are all up in arms, of course, because there's no more bail.
Right, they're going to lose their jobs.
On the other hand, if it's more of a heinous crime of a kind, even though there's a presumption of innocence, they just say, no bail, you're sitting it out. And you sit in the county jail until your trial.
Oh, God.
And if it's a felony, first you have the preliminary hearing.
Right.
And then you sit through that, and then the next time is the arraignment in Superior Court, and the next time after that is trial, you're sitting it out.
So you said well, off the air that it's not going to. I thought it was going to take place starting effectively October, but you said no, that's not happening.
Somebody, I don't know how it worked. Somebody somewhere got legislation passed, staying the beginning of this new law, which was supposed to be in October. They put it over to the 2020 election for the public to decide whether they want to do away with bail.
Oh, really? We're going to be able to vote on it?
You'll be able to vote on it.
Oh, that's great.
So it's no longer going to matter how much money you have. Bad people will still sit it out if they have money to buy the bond.
Wow, that's pretty.
That's a quick buck.
Yeah.
You know, like the $600,000 bail. which was based on the amount that the insurance company had paid on this claim. That's why they set the bail at that amount. And I couldn't talk the DA into reducing it. Even though this was a good guy, could get nowhere. Discretionary calls. And that's your biggest risk to you folks out there in the public. And you get caught up in this system and you get assigned to one of these people, there ain't much you can do about it. You're stuck.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my cynical view of my colleagues on the bench.
You did a good job.
But I'm not. I'm only sitting part-time now, much more infrequently, because I'm out there doing other things. But the fact of the matter is, most rewarding job I ever had.
That's great.
And I think if it had been 20 years earlier, I might have taken it on a full-time paid job thing. I was offered it at least 8 times and never said yes. This worked out great because I got what I wanted, this county got what they wanted, and hopefully justice was done.
It was, Judge.
I think so.
It was. Great show.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Cool. All right, if you want to get the Judge's book, it's available on Amazon.com, From the Trench to the Bench. And also, he's got YouTube videos out there. And if you want to ask him a question, it's askjudgeherb@gmail.com. Yes, you can actually email the judge, askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
People are asking me about Roger Stone.
Oh, well, we'll talk about it.
I'm telling them what I think.
Talk about it next week.
Okay.
Cool.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM.